Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Sit back and listen to interviews, discussion about books, and anything else literary. There's always something or someone new on the show. Good evening, listeners, and welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Behind the books, honest voices, real stories. I'm Amy Shannon, and each episode brings you heartfelt conversations with the storytellers behind the stories, authors, publishers, and creatives who shape the literary world. And every second Sunday, join me for story time, where tales come alive for all ages. Let's turn the page together. Tonight we have an author joining us, and I'd like to thank you. And would you please introduce yourself and let people know how they can contact you?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I'm Lori Miller Kase, and I am the author of a young adult novel called The Accident. They can contact me. They could find me and contact me through my website, which is www.lorimillerkase.com, and that's LORIMILLERKASE. And they can also find me on Instagram at Lori Miller Kase Writes.
Great. Thank you very much. So, how long have you been a writer?
I have been a writer for my entire life. I've only been an author for a few weeks because my book came out on October 14th, and this is my debut novel.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. But I've been a writer always. Since I was little, I used to write stories pretty much as soon as I learned how to read and write.
That reminds me of me.
I think with a lot of young aspiring writers. And I spent most of my career as a journalist. So I've been writing professionally ever since I graduated college. I did fiction writing a lot when I was younger and in college, but I put my fiction writing aside to start my journalism career at the New York Times after I graduated. And I worked as a journalist for many, many years. And then when I was approaching a big milestone birthday of 40, I decided that if I was going to write a novel someday, which I always planned to do, I needed to get back to my fiction writing. So I enrolled in a graduate program at Wesleyan University to study creative writing. And it was in one of the workshops I did after I graduated with one of my professors from Wesleyan that I started a short story called The Accident, which eventually morphed into this young adult novel.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. Like I mentioned before, I had just gotten it. So, was it difficult to turn off your your journalism writing and then go back to fiction, or was it
It was. Well, there were two things. I slowly transitioned back into creative writing. It wasn't that difficult to start. Again, it was sort of a nice break from journalism. When I had an article due, one way I would procrastinate is to work on my short stories I was doing for school. And it was a nice way to give my brain a break from one kind of writing and do the other kind of writing. And then I think creative writing kind of made my journalism better because I became more descriptive, and my fiction writing self kind of came out a little bit when I was writing journalism features, and I would just write better, I think. But I also used my journalistic impulses to make sure that the story that I was writing in this book was grounded in reality, even though it's fiction. There's a police investigation in it and an arraignment, and I interviewed experts like I am used to doing in journalism to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. So I interviewed a criminal lawyer and a couple of justices, a juvenile justice and a regular criminal justice, and I interviewed a police chief. So that sort of made the book better because it made it a little more realistic.
I think that's an important part of writing, is that just because it's fiction doesn't mean it shouldn't be accurate in some ways. I mean, even if there's stuff that you make up, you make up a process or whatever, it has to make sense that if that particular thing existed, this is how it would be, So I think that, just because someone's writing fiction doesn't mean that they don't have to do the research, especially if there's stuff that they don't know about. If you have a police officer in your story or a doctor, you should know how they would react or act in certain situations. So
because you want the reader to be drawn in to the story and feel like what they're reading is real.
Yeah, exactly.
And I may have used a little creative license. For example, I may have had more people in, say, an arraignment than would be in real life just because I needed to for dramatic effect. But for the most part, it's pretty grounded in reality.
Yeah, but just the fact that you have an arraignment, I mean, I don't know how many readers would go in and count how many people you would go in the courtroom and have one. But I think that's a great part of, just being an author and, or just a writer. I think we're writers and storytellers at heart, no matter what genre we're writing in, fiction or non. And, we become an author once it's published. It's not an easy thing to do, though, especially with your debut novel of presenting it to get published. I mean, that was
a long process.
Yeah. So, how did you? I think you were referred by your publicist.
Yes. What I did is, I got back into creative writing, first by doing short stories, and I spent a lot of years, still doing my journalism, but on the side I would be writing short stories, and I started to submit them to literary journals. So I started getting familiar with the submission process, even though it's quite different with short stories than it is with novels.
Right.
And I had some experience, submitting story ideas and essay ideas in journalism as well. But when it came time to, and I knew from short stories that you have to be really persevering, because I must have submitted my first short story to 50 plus places before I got my first one accepted. And then it became easier as time got on, and as you build a history of having things published. But with the novel, it's a very involved process. I started taking classes when I was writing this novel in writing books for young audiences. And, you asked me if it was difficult to transition from journalism to creative writing. I think the most difficult thing for me craft-wise was to transition from writing for adults to writing for teens.
I would say so. That's I've read a lot of young adults, and they're wonderful, but sometimes they make the teenagers seem, less mature than maybe an actual teenager would be, or they act too much like they're too much adult-like, so it's more like an adult book. So getting that, I can just imagine, just getting those, making sure that the characters fit, for, young adults and
that they seem real. One critique I got from my classmates when I was taking these classes, on writing books for kids, was that my language sounded too adult, or maybe I used words that a teenager wouldn't use, which doesn't mean that I have to dumb down the writing or make the writing. I mean, teens are smart and can read, really deep things, but you want the teen to use language that a teenager would use.
Yeah.
And so that was just really helpful to be taking classes, and some of the people in my classes had teenage kids, and if I used a slang word, say, that they weren't really using anymore, they would tell me. And I think also just reading a lot of young adult books while I was writing helped me sort of capture that teenage voice.
That's really good, because that's what I recommend to people that are writers who, like, they want to, expand and switch genres, or even stay with their own, but
read other people's work, see their writing style, see how things are. I mean, you don't have to, you should emulate them, but you get an idea. Or even sit down with a teenager and talk to them.
Right.
It's just trying to, you want to get it right. And if you have it, if your story took place in the 50s, the slang for the 50s would be a lot different than the slang what's going on now. And emojis, and I've learned things about what emojis mean that I wish I never did. But,
and I do have, mine is contemporary, so I do have a lot of texting happening in the book. So yes, I had to.
That's just what seems to happen. But I think it's wonderful that not just that you went back to your creative writing style, and then how it affected your journalism writing, because everything is so different. But adding more, details to something can bring it to life.
Right, like the sensory details. I started to do that much more in my stories, and it really set the scene better for articles about different places and different people.
Yeah, now I'm kind of getting that myself. I used to write full-length novels, and then I switched to short stories again. I used to write short stories and poetry as a kid. Before I could write, was telling stories. So my mom called me her little storyteller, because at 4, I was making up better endings for the nursery books, like the Three Bears that she would read me, and I'm like, I don't like how that ended. This is how it should be told.
I know a lot of those old fairy tales and nursery stories are pretty dark.
Yeah, I know. Disney made them all nice and sweet, but the original ones are not that way.
Right, because I had a couple of books of fairy tales that had once belonged to my dad in my bedroom growing up, and I used to read them all the time. But now when I think back to those stories, yeah, they're pretty dark.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I know, and then Disney came and made it all better. But but I think now I think kids would be more apt to liking the darker ones, but you never know. Things change. So you said that so your book, The Accident, that just came out recently?
Yes, it was published on October 14th. It's about a tragic hit and run accident in a small Connecticut town. A beloved high school football player has been killed, and the town is just reeling. And Hannah, my main character, who's 15, overhears her brother and his best friend, who is her crush and eventually becomes her first boyfriend over the course of the story. Mm-hmm. She overhears them talking, and it sounds like they might have been involved in the accident. Now, she and the reader only hear bits and pieces of the conversation, so we don't know exactly what happened and if they were definitely involved. So the reader's sort of learning. She's a little bit of an unreliable narrator, because we know right away that she doesn't know any more than the reader does.
Yeah.
And we also can see pretty quickly that her perspective on what happened might be somewhat skewed by her attraction to her brother's friend. But anyway, that's the starting point. And, she vows to protect them as this police investigation unfolds, but it's a very hard secret to keep. And she finds herself lying to her best friend and to her parents and feeling very conflicted and guilty, and a lot of things happen over the course of the novel. But one of the things that happens is that ultimately 2 different versions of the truth about the accident emerge, and Hannah's forced to decide where her loyalties lie.
Oh, interesting. I can't wait to read it. You have an excerpt you want to read to us?
Sure. I've been reading just from the very beginning of the novel. I think that gives people a good feel for what's to come. So I'm just going to read the first few pages. It's the prologue and the very short first chapter. Prologue. The accident is all over the news. Dads wave the papers in front of their teenage kids, a cautionary tale. Moms speak about it in hushed tones while standing with their children at the bus stop. They whisper about it over coffee at Village Bagels and while waiting for their yoga classes to start. Kids talk about it while crowded around lockers, huddled in stairwells, leaning over homeroom desks. They talk about it on the bus, in the cafeteria, and behind the bleachers, where people are leaving flowers and footballs by the photo someone stuck onto a metal pole. But I don't say anything, because of what I know. Chapter 1. I stare at Tyler's profile picture. His blue eyes seem even bluer above the black grease smeared below them. He's smiling, giving a thumbs up. He'd probably just won a game. Switching screens, I click on the photo that had been shared from phone to phone at school, the one of his body under a sheet. I study the silhouette outlined by the white fabric, the protrusions where the nose, the shoulders, the feet would be. So still. How could this be the same person? I zoom in, searching for proof that he's under there. Someone I know. Someone I knew. To see a piece of his clothing, a glimpse of his blue and white practice jersey, his jet black hair. The front door slams and jolts me away from my screen. Finally, Rob. I hear feet on the stairs. My brother's door squeaks open, then shut. It's always shut. But I need to talk to him. Maybe he knows something. After all, he and Tyler were in the same grade. I'm about to get up and find out when I hear Rob talking to someone. His room is next to mine, and the wall between us is very thin. I know this because whenever I practice guitar or sing along with the radio, Rob shouts at me to shut up, or punches the wall. Shit, what are we going to do? I freeze when I realize the other voice belongs to Zach. Rob mumbles something, but I can't make out what he's saying. I lean forward on my beanbag chair, toward our shared wall, but still can't decipher his words. I hear footsteps, which I assume belong to Zach. They get softer and then louder. Shit, shit, shit. Zach's voice too gets louder as he paces toward the wall, quieter as he walks away. His voice sounds different. Scared. My stomach tightens. Their words are muffled, but I can make out some of what they say. Shouldn't have. Too high to drive. What? They couldn't be talking about the accident, could they? Not Zach. Please don't let it be Zach. Zach, calm down, Rob says, his voice rising so that he doesn't sound calm either. Just think. What is he saying? I want to hear and I don't want to hear. Rob, he's dead, Jesus. My heart stops for a second. My hands close into fists and the computer teeters on my lap. I grab it just before it falls to the floor. At that moment, Rob's fish song ringtone interrupts their conversation. Yeah, he's here, Rob says. Yeah, okay. More mumbling. And then they're gone. I don't move. I glance down at the computer screen, which has gone dark, and slowly close my laptop. Yet even as part of my brain is engaged in the mechanical act of shutting my computer, the other part is racing. Is it their fault Tyler is dead? I think I should stop there.
Wow.
But you get an idea of what's going to happen.
Wow, that is very enticing. I'm sure a lot of people definitely want to get a copy of that book and find out what happens next.
Thank you.
That is amazing.
Thank you so much.
So, what inspired you for this story, or what kind of came across like, okay, this idea of the accident?
So one of the things that inspired this story was that there was a tragic accident in my town around the time that I was writing it. And a van full of adults crashed into a car driven by a teen, and 2 of the adults died.
Oh, geez.
And the teen was not at fault, but I felt so sad for this young person, who would have to always live with the knowledge that they were in this accident that killed 2 people.
Right.
And how can a teenager get beyond that, or can they get beyond that? And when I'm thinking of story ideas, I start to think of what if scenarios. So I started thinking, what if a teen was responsible for a fatal accident?
Right.
And what if he or she kept driving? And what if someone in their family knew that they were involved? What would they do with that knowledge? And I would think that a family member would be inclined to protect one of their own, but how do you keep a secret like that?
Yeah.
So that was sort of one of the things that went into this story. I also had 2 teenage drivers at the time that I was writing it, and as a parent, you always worry about something happening to your kids when they're driving.
My kids are in their, I have a son who's 26 and my other one's just turning 30, and they drive like I used to, and it drives me up the wall.
I know. My kids are now in their early 30s, and I still worry about them.
Yeah, I do too.
But especially when they're teenagers and they don't really, they're just learning how to drive and they haven't encountered all the, other crazy drivers who make mistakes and
play their music loud or they get distracted just like adults do. And sometimes they emulate our bad behavior. I can't drive anymore, but when I did, I would I didn't flip people off, but I mumble under my breath about lousy drivers. So my son's caught on to that. And I'm like, oh, I just hate driving with you. You drive like me. That's terrible.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's scary. I remember when I was thinking up this idea, I have this very specific memory of pulling out of my driveway in my neighborhood. And there were lots of little kids in my neighborhood at the time. And they would always pop up like in the street or in my driveway out of nowhere. So I just was, thinking like you have to just be so careful because you can't get distracted for 1 second or something could happen that could change so many people's lives.
Yeah, kids been running out between cars, chasing a ball and they're not paying attention.
Right. So you just have to be so attentive. And the other thing is that I like to write about people grappling with moral dilemmas, when it's sort of gray, what right and wrong is. And I also pretty much everything I write, whether it's short stories or essays or novels, revolves somehow around family dynamics. I really love to explore how people within a family connect with one another or don't connect with one another, and how these connections are broken and how they're repaired. And, I am all these different roles in my life, a mother, a sister, a daughter,
right,
a friend, a wife. So I take what I know, like all writers do, and then create and test different relationships in my writing. And I like to also kind of threaten these relationships in my writing because it creates more tension.
Exactly.
And as one of my teachers is always telling me, we need to be mean to our characters and throw a lot of obstacles in their way so that we can create more tension and raise the stakes in the story. So I'm very mean to Hannah in The Accident, and she has a lot of angst, which just increases as this book goes on.
Oh, that's like, just normal teenage angst is one thing, but then adding something like this, is probably her imagination running wild because she has no idea about, the details. She only hears bits and pieces. And what teenager wouldn't be, in that situation? Even if, like teenagers that cause an accident because they were high or not paying attention or they were drunk and they end up killing someone or killing themselves. It's something that is, I hate to say it, but it's what happens in life,
I know, and it's sort of a dark topic that I started my novel with, but I just think that there's a lot to think about, and that kids encounter people dying.
Yeah.
And also in the age of social media now, it's like it's that you can't escape it. Like if something bad happens, which is the case in my novel too, it's just all over the media, streaming constantly on their devices. Everyone's sharing things on social media about it. People are grieving kind of out loud on Facebook pages and on social media. So it's, I try to create, I think this is realistic. This is what people are dealing with, but I try to show that in my novel too. And it's just another thing that adds to her angst because she can't get away from, even her parents are talking about it at the dinner table. Like there's just no getting away from it or getting a break from it. It's just constant bombardment with this stressful situation and her trying to figure out, what happened and trying to think of what could have happened in ways that would make the people she cares about not involved.
Yeah.
So.
And when you were talking earlier about your, thinking about what if this happened, what if that happened, and I think that's something that, I think that's part of what inspires people to write. It's like they might see a situation and wonder, not know the whole story, but wonder, okay, what if this was this? It's like people watching. I love to do that.
Yeah, me too.
You just get that, like see how people interact and how you would, and I do it and how I would describe it, like with words in my head, what they're doing.
Uh-huh.
I do that like on TV shows when I'm watching or something. Like, how would I describe this if I was writing this scene? And
When you're writing a scene, can you picture it in your head like a movie?
yeah, I do. I write until I have to stop and think about it. But it's playing in my head. The way the voices are, and I see these people, and they're not like, I don't picture movie stars playing them. It's just whatever is in my head and what they look like average people doing things. And sometimes I take a bit of personalities from different people and then put them into one. And I always give somebody a quirk. Even if it's a villain, I always think that. I love writing for the villains, and, it's kind of fun because, they pretty much do whatever they want. But then I try to give them something that is like
Some vulnerability or some human.
yeah, a quirk. Like I had this saga that I wrote. It's 67 volumes, and I finally finished it a couple years ago. But I had a villain, and then I brought him back a few times in the stories, and I wanted him to kind of seek redemption, but not be fully redeemed. So instead of being evil, he was just kind of more like a jerk. But his little quirk and his secret was that he loved to watch the show Full House. And
Oh, that was hysterical.
so I just, I was thinking, I'm like, what kind of show? I mean, that's like, it's a pure innocent and everything's solved within 30 minutes. And here is this, big, evil doctor who did experiments on people, but yet he'll sit back to watch Full House. So I just thought.
I love that. I think that it's the little quirks that the characters have also that make them more real. Like like you said, you come up with these what if scenarios or these premises, but I don't always know the whole plot when I start to write. I just have the premise and kind of the themes I want to kind of explore, but I just kind of make it up as I go along.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I let my characters lead the way.
Yeah, and I think I was working on this novel, and at some point there's this thing called National Novel Writers Month every November.
Yep.
And I was and people all over the country participated. I'm sure you know about it, and vow to either write a whole novel in the month or finish their novel in the month, and they help you calculate how many words you have to write a day and all that. And I was going to a workshop nearby because they have all these workshops connected to NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
And the workshop leader gave us a prompt to help us with our novels and said to think about one of your characters and what they keep hidden under their bed.
Oh.
And that prompt gave me this great detail about one of my characters. Zach, who becomes her boyfriend over the course of the novel, keeps diagrams of these Rube Goldberg creations under his bed because that's something that he used to build with his father. And Rube Goldbergs are these crazy inventions where you have like shoots and slides, and you roll a marble down and it knocks over dominoes and does all these actions,
Cool.
by the different things it hits something and then something else happens. And it sort of ended up, connecting to my whole theme of, cause and effect and choices and consequences, in the novel, because every time the marble hits something in one of these machines, it causes something else to happen and ripple effect.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that was just like a quirk. It brought this whole backstory to him about him and his father that I didn't have in the novel, that made him a much more real character. And so I think things like that, and like the guy watching Full House, these quirky things that they're into, could end up, having a life of their own and really enhancing the stories and the characters.
Yeah, I like putting characters in a place where they wouldn't normally be comfortable with, and see what happens. And sometimes,
that definitely increases the tension.
Yeah, and sometimes I never get writer's block, because I could always write something else, but I call it story block. So like the story I'm working on and I don't know where to go. So I read this magazine article a really long time ago, and it was about writer's block and what to do for it. And the quote I remember was, "A man walks in the room with a gun." So, and it doesn't have to be literal, but, what would shake up something, a scene? People are like in a hospital ER or something, and a guy comes in with a gun or a bomb strapped to him or something like that, that would kind of add to whatever's going on and, throw another wrench into it. You could have a a guy wearing something and ends up in a courtroom somehow. And he went through metal detectors, but yet, he printed out a gun and started shooting people. So, it's whatever, putting them in a situation that they wouldn't normally, think that they would be in, or even adding a natural disaster. I just think that,
Oh, so yeah, that's so interesting. What happens when I have writer's block is either I switch to another project, because I work across a bunch of different genres. So when I was doing more of my journalism, I would work on an article if I got stuck on my short story or novel, or vice versa. Or now when I'm writing my novels and I'm stuck, I might go back to a picture book I'm working on, and it just sort of is a different mindset. But what I'll do a lot of times is this thing called free writing, where you just write for like a certain amount of time, say 5 or 10 minutes, without taking your pen off the page, just anything that comes into your head. And often something will come up, some idea will come up from doing that. That's sort of something to add to the story, or somewhere to go with the story.
I get that. I have notebooks, piles of, they're in boxes of just things like that, writing an idea down, or just writing and writing and writing. And then I'll go back to these some of them I have the books have already been written and things like that, but I'll go back and see for the ones that haven't, and, look at all that. But, writing is fun.
It is. It's hard sometimes.
Yeah, it
but
is. It's fun. It's getting what's in your head out on paper.
Exactly.
Because otherwise we would all be schizophrenic with all these characters in our head.
Exactly.
But I really want to thank you for being on my show, and and I'll be reading your book and giving you a review, so you'll be hearing from me in the future.
I appreciate it.
Anything that you write in the future, you can send to me, and I'll be happy to read it and review it for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. So I'm going to just wrap up now. It's the end of another great conversation. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening. If you wish for you or your book to be on the show, just go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Please follow this podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.
Tune in here again next week for another tantalizing discussion. Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast.